Welcome to Raw Food. What's happening, Jay?
T. Welcome to Raw Food. I am so stoked because we just saw a fabulous World Cup match.
Outstanding game. Worth watching. Argentina versus France. What is the first-time victory for Argentina? First-time victory for Mr. Messi. Congratulations, sir. And a disappointing game for France. And here we are. Where did you watch the game, Jay?
I put it on at the crib and then just had a hunch. Maybe one of these bars near my place is open, and was very surprised and stoked to find that it was actually full, this place down the street. So
yeah, man,
it was great to watch it with the crowd. The passion, the excitement, the room was buzzing. It was awesome. It was a great experience.
Nice. We chilled. We watched it at home on the big screen. It's freezing here in New York. Sunny day, but cold as you know what. So we opted to chill, and I drank coquito all morning with a splash of coffee.
Nice.
So moving on to this season of Earth, things to keep in mind that have happened over the last era of time on this planet. I think it should be of note that CVS and Walgreens has agreed to pay $10 billion to settle lawsuits that are linked to opioid sales. I don't know if you saw the OxyContin documentary, but this planet ain't shit. I'll tell you this much. It is very interesting that they were willing to do that. They've agreed to pay more than $10 billion across many states in a settlement of lawsuits brought against them that said they had an active complicit role in the opioid crisis. The companies, of course, have not admitted to any wrongdoing. Of course, why would they? Sam Bankman-Fried is the disgraced former CEO of FTX Crypto, who thought he was untouchable and then found out he was when they slapped those handcuffs on him. More to be seen with that.
Yeah, Bankman-Fried.
In other news, there is still a lot of heat coming down on Deion Sanders for this transition from the HBCU, which is very disappointing. Brittney Griner is back home after swapped out for the Russian arms dealer who the movie Lord of War was based on, to much public outcry and backlash. The argument is that there is a military officer who has been trapped there for quite some time, albeit 2 years under the Trump administration, who has not been brought home. So the argument is that this has made the U.S. look weak, giving Putin a running punch joke line in their country about how silly America looks for exchanging an arms dealer for a celebrity, speaking to how much Americans are obsessed with celebrity. Nonetheless, New York has banned pet stores from selling cats, dogs, and rabbits. I didn't know that they were able to do that. Pet shops are supposed to work with shelters instead. It will also ban breeders from selling more than 9 animals a year in an attempt to target commercial breeding operations that people are basically saying is the slave trade of animals. Congress, in a strange moral turn due north, has voted to remove a bust of the Dred Scott decision's author from the Capitol. The House passed legislation that would replace the statue of Roger Taney, the Supreme Court justice who wrote the Dred Scott decision that made slaves in no matter what state where they were in, free or not. Mm-hmm. And the call to replace it with Thurgood Marshall, who was the first African-American to serve on the Supreme Court. That's interesting. Important to note that the significance of the Dred Scott decision, as I said, that occurred in 1857, is what upheld slavery and basically solidified the fact that Blacks were not citizens of the United States. Moving on to more bizarre news, the Chancellor of Purdue is being called to resign from his position for publicly, during a commencement speech, mock the sound of Asian languages to Americans.
Yeah, Purdue Northwest, not the main
Purdue Northwest
University.
To everyone's surprise, Elon Musk has suspended several journalists and along with Kanye, I believe, from utilizing Twitter right now, saying he does not support the type of speech and verbal activity that they are engaging in. And Starbucks workers continue their move forward to unionizing and are planning a 3-day walkout across 100 U.S. stores. The Starbucks originator is a native New Yorker. It will be interesting to see how this plays out. What say you, Jay?
Let's go back to Brittney Griner really quick.
Sure.
Because we did cover that in detail on our previous episode. I did just want to say, it bothers me that Brittney Griner gets released and we can't just celebrate that. We immediately, the American cultural conversation immediately goes to culture war and politics. How does this make Biden look? Oh, approval ratings up, down. Oh, we look weak. Oh, Brittney Griner is a lesbian. She's black and she hates America. Oh, our Marine.
Right. Why do we bring her home? She should have stayed there because she hates America. You know, none of that means anything. She is protected as a person, whether she hates America or not. She's protected as an American citizen. I mean, we keep saying free speech until somebody says something we don't like. And then all of a sudden free speech is out the window and then we all turn into Nazis. I mean, what is this? Nobody has to hate America just because they criticize it. And we have to understand the distinction between healthy criticism and actual hate. But everybody's so in their feelings, we can't make that distinction. We're not critically thinking through anything. Continue, my friend.
Moving on from that. Oh, well, also, one last thing about Victor Boot. How much of the things that he was getting up to, because he was an arms dealer for a very long time, and yes, there was this point in time when he was trying to kill Americans, but was he doing that all of the time? Let me just put it this way. I believe there may have been a point in time where he was acting and doing his thing within the full knowledge of the CIA, that the CIA totally knew who this guy was and what he was up to. And they were like, yeah, let him. Now, what's that based on? A hunch and obviously a scene out of Lord of War where Nicolas Cage's character gets busted out of jail. And it's implied that the CIA says, yeah, no, we want this guy out there helping stabilize these places, right? So put it out there. I don't have any proof, but this guy was doing this for a very long time. I'm sure the CIA knew who he was.
He got out of jail quickly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in the movie.
An arms dealer.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Like fast.
Very fast. Now, let's move on. Let's move back to SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried. The interesting piece, amongst all of the interesting pieces of this, his parents are both compliance lawyers. And I think one of them was teaching at Stanford Law. So this guy completely avoided, how is it that your parents are compliance lawyers and you didn't uphold compliance, right?
Well, he probably thought with their knowledge what he could get away with, right?
Exactly. That's what bothers me. And then on top of that, he was donating a ton of money to politicians, a whole bunch of Democrats. We don't know if that specific money came directly from customer accounts or if that was other money that he had. But it's not a really good look. And his approach, and one of the reasons why he was able to make friends on Capitol Hill was that he was seemingly welcoming regulation of the crypto industry, obviously with the caveat that his company FTX would be the one to get these operating licenses to be able to do their thing. Hey, let's totally regulate, but of course, make sure that I'm the one company that's allowed with these new regulations to operate, right? That type of thing was the general thrust of what he was doing with his political contributions and political activities. So some, overall DeFi and blockchain enthusiasts believe, and just Web3 folks in general, actually believe that this scandal and the failure of FTX is probably net better for distributed finance and Web3, because we don't want all of this power and all of this influence lying in the hands of this one guy who made a bunch of political donations.
Correct. To your point about his parents, who, by the way, were part of what
I should correct myself real quick. Decentralized finance, not distributed.
Decentralized finance. Thank you for the correction.
DeFi.
Sam Bankman-Fried has noted in meetings with Washington policymakers that both of his parents are professors at Stanford Law School and that their reputations were a credential to their son as he grew his crypto empire, even to those inclined to see little value in the industry. Joseph Bankman and Barbara Fried remained by his side as legal advisors. One person familiar with the matter said, but mainly as parents to a son who is in deep trouble. Right.
Yeah.
They've been in the Bahamas with their son for more than a month as the company's problems have cascaded, and that they have allegedly told friends that the surmountable legal bills will likely wipe them out financially.
Woo.
But they're standing by their boy, as any good parent would. And this is according to the Financial News article.
Why do your parents need to pay your legal bills when you're a grown man and you were a billionaire?
Well, you're not a billionaire after they handcuff your ass, right?
Yes.
Because the first thing they want to do is start freezing into your assets and start taking your shit.
That's a good point. That's why you don't do dirt like that.
Right. Unless you've already got money stashed, prepared for this day, which you should know at this point is inevitably coming because it comes to everyone.
Yes. If you're doing dirt like that, you should have had a side pot for your legal bills for this.
Right. They got Madoff, they got Martha Stewart. They're sure as fuck going to get you.
Yeah. Ain't that some shit?
Ain't that some shit?
Mm-hmm. Let's touch base on this Purdue Northwest thing.
Bro, this dude's tripping.
This was at a commencement. This was not some conversation in private where he was recorded without his knowledge and he just happened to make a off-color joke. He was on the mic at the podium with all, in the full regalia of commencement.
Intentional. This was not a hot mic take. This was not a private dinner party where he was secretly recorded. This was a public forum addressing students at the school. And he, real talk, made an Asian racist, stereotypical joke, making fun of the sound of their language, and genuinely thought he was funny.
Yes.
He reenacted the sound of their language. I mean, who does that? They don't even do that in film anymore.
Yeah. And this is at graduation.
This is at a college. This is at an educational institution.
Right. You are not the commencement speaker. You're just here to introduce the next person.
Right.
You aren't the person delivering the keynote. It is not your job to entertain. Why did you feel you needed to make a joke? You're the president of the school. You're the highest paid, I don't know, maybe the football coach, but like, you run this. You run this whole thing. Why are you trying to be funny right now?
Why are you trying to be Mr. Funny Guy right now? And it didn't work. It fell flat. People are offended and they're calling for his resignation. Having said that, he has apologized. He said he realizes that his off-color joke was in poor taste. He has apologized to community and anybody he has offended. What is your take on cancel culture? Do people get to apologize and recover, or are they supposed to burn at the stake for the rest of their lives over a sin?
I don't think this person needs to burn at the stake for the rest of his life. I don't think this guy needs to even be, just thrown out of education or should never be the president or a high-ranking administrator of a university.
Should he resign? Should he resign?
I think he should resign. Why?
Interesting.
Here's why. Because failing to do so drags this on and makes it a huge distraction going into the next school year. And also all of those students who graduated at this commencement, this is what their commencement is known for. This is the big memory from this milestone in your life, is this guy's gaffe. The lack of judgment, it's not just what he said, it's the overall lack of judgment that it took to get to this point is indicative of someone who's not up to the job. All right. And then on top of that, failing or refusing to resign, it makes your school look like Hillbilly University. It makes your school look like Liberty University. Like you're trying to brand
guys are the racist hicks, the liberal elitist coastal community thinks you are.
Right. It's almost as if you're trying to brand yourself as the anti-cancel culture university. Now, if that's not
maybe they are. Maybe they're the anti-woke university. Take your racism and your hatred of everything that's not you to our community and bring your credit card. We'll welcome you.
So that's why I said Liberty University, because that's an evangelical university started by, I believe, Jerry Falwell. That's their whole branding, is we're an evangelical school.
Before the threesome, right? Before his fall from grace due to a threesome. And shit, I ain't opposed to a good threesome. I am opposed to the hypocrisy. Fucking idiot. This is why I can't stand Christians who are the ones who are singing the loudest at church and praying next to the president. Nobody is as holy as you're pretending to be. Nobody loves Jesus as much as you're acting like you do. Shit, you don't even like the people in your house and in your household. You don't even like your neighbors. Now you're going to tell me you love a man you've never met from the Middle East? Fuck out of here with this bullshit. It's like mass mental illness to believe that anybody really loves Jesus and God that way. When we walk outside every day, you see any demonstration of Christ and love and God out there?
No.
I digress.
Especially not from these people.
Oh, so you had a Christian university right before we found out that you like to watch the pool boy bang your wife?
Talk a bit about that, because there's a new Hulu series. Like, let's add some context.
I haven't watched it yet, but I plan to. I mean, I don't know what's more repulsive to me, the hypocrisy of the Jerry Falwells of the world, or the hypocrisy of the Brett Favres of the world, who stole millions and millions of dollars from the poorest people in the entire country of the United States. And I'm not going to let that go.
Thank you.
We burned Kyrie Irving at the stake for posting a link. Ain't nobody said nothing about Jeff Bezos, whose website the link is hosted on. And I'm not going to let it go that Jerry Jones was in a crowd of white boys trying to stop black people from integrating into a school. Can we get our priorities straight on this weird planet? Ugh.
I actually have a different take on that. I kind of...
Excuse me, sir? A different take on what?
On the Jerry Jones thing, because the guy was 14 at the time, and it was...
They didn't care that Trayvon Martin was under 14. They didn't care that Emmett Till was 14.
Emmett Till, yeah. Now,
you better stop this nonsense right now, my man. You better stop your foolishness.
I'd be with you if we had a picture of him holding a sign like, "Oh, you niggers don't go to our school, keep Arkansas white." If it was that, rather than like the picture of him, he's just like looking. Now I don't believe that when he says I was just going there to check it out. But based on that picture and that picture alone, we don't have enough to treat him as if he was there with a giant sign that said, "Screw all you niggers, get out of my school." If he had that, I'd say, yes, fuck this guy. And also the article about it tried to tie it back to the fact that he didn't have, hasn't been a black head coach for the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys don't have a lot of turnover with their head coaches. It was Tom Landry, then Jerry Jones bought the team, and then it was Jimmy Johnson for a long time, then Barry Switzer for a long time, then two guys that we don't talk about, Dave Campo and Chan Gailey, and then it was Bill Parcells for a long time, and then it was Wade Phillips for a long time, and then it was Jason Garrett for a really long time, for too long. And now it's Mike McCarthy, and he's going to be around for a long time. We don't have the turnover that some of these teams who have bad coaches all the time. And so they're firing a coach every 2 years. So, of course, they've eventually gotten to the point of having a black coach. That's the only point I wanted to get out on that, because the article about it was like, hey, the Cowboys have never had a black coach. They've had plenty of black assistant coaches and black people in other positions. They just haven't had a black head coach. And taking that and relating it to this picture was a bit of a stretch.
For me, it wasn't about that. For me, it was about the accountability and the disparate treatment of accountability between white boys and black boys at the same age.
I like that. That's fair.
Do I think Jerry Jones should have a picture dug up from him from, the era of Moses and used against him? No, I don't think anybody should have anything that they've done under the age of 25, because that's what science has shown the brain is fully developed. So anybody under 25 can't be held responsible 10, 20 years later. Like, why'd you say that when you were 11? Like, give me a break. I mean, we're all sinners, all of us. What I don't like is the disparate treatment of how we treat black and brown children who are 14 years old with white children of the same age. He gets a pass, right? The first thing everybody said, well, he's 14, that was the past. And I agree with that. But yet we don't seem to treat black and brown children of the same age with the same kind of sensitivity. And I think that's the disappointing part. That's the issue I have with it.
That's a very, very good point. I appreciate that.
Word.
Moving on from that, how do you just overall, what's your read on what we can expect from this upcoming Congress after everything that's happened with the midterms and whatnot? Because they're going to get in office, I believe, January 20th. That's just around the corner.
There'll be a forced recalibration, I believe, on both sides. They'd both be idiots not to. Again, there was this expected red wave that never came, right? But that's not a compliment to the Democrats, because that lack of red wave wasn't due to how outstanding Democratic policies were. It sort of went back to the same kind of bad taste in your mouth election between Trump and Hillary. Most people arguably didn't really like either one of them. But if you have to choose one, my choices are between Satan and Lucifer. It's something inside you that is able to make that distinction, knowing full well either way, the vote leaves you feeling dirty. So I think there's a recalibration that the Republicans have to do, because they, of course, thought that red wave was going to come and blow out the Democrats, and it did not. Thankfully, at least from my perspective, the most promising thing about it, because I don't necessarily have a problem with all of Republican policies, I seem to have a problem with the Republicans who are upholding the extreme white supremacist entity of it, which seems to be a solid 35% of the party at this point. The issue is the undercurrent of unwelcoming of others that seems to be bleeding through that party. But because they didn't have that win, they have to recalibrate. They have no choice.
Right.
Similarly, I think the Democrats have to recalibrate, knowing that win wasn't because of their success. That win was a default of the Republicans' loss, not because the Democratic platform was so strong. And they are in desperate need of recalibration. I mean, if they're going to wheel out Biden again, that's not going to stimulate the party. Personally, I think the thing that would engage the election the most from an entertainment value would be a Gavin Newsom DeSantis adversarial presidential run.
I hate Gavin Newsom at this point, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, isn't that a strong word though, Toto?
Yes, but I have justification for it. This nigga is getting everybody excited about reparations in California when we all know that shit ain't fucking happening. I got relatives in North Carolina that are telling me about how they can go and, get the county records so I can prove I'm a descendant of slavery, so I can get these reparations that California is talking about handing out. I know, and everyone else should know for a fact, that this is just Gavin Newsom trying to virtue signal to pad his stats for when he runs for president. And it disgusts me that he's getting all these niggas' hopes up with this reparations task force that isn't going to go anywhere. Niggas are arguing back and forth.
I don't know what his platform is.
A bunch of niggas don't even realize that this shit is just California. They think it's actually being done at the federal level. They're like, why is California first? It's Gavin Newsom just, initiating a reparations task force so that when he runs for president, he can win the Democratic.
He can say, look, right, I said I would do this. I have questions about the reparations platform, regardless of who it's coming from. I'd like to know how that calculation is being made, how America alone can be held responsible for that, during a time that slavery was occurring internationally and still is, quite frankly. And I think more important than economic reparations is access to resources. So I don't know if the solvent to this is cutting Black people a check, proving whose, family line extends longer into slavery, or whether or not just allowing people of color full access to government jobs, full access to education, full access to Head Start, just full access to the programs that would give them the tools they need to replenish their own economic trajectory. But I'd have to see what somebody's plan is. I mean, everybody's saying reparations, but I don't know what the plan is. What's the reparation plan? I know the word, but what's the plan? And who's going to cash that check, by the way?
Yeah, the task force has put out some literature, so they at least explain themselves about here's how we came to this calculation of money. Here's how we came to this determination of who would get it, and da-da-da. And that's all nice and well and good.
Sure, the language sounds great.
But it's not happening. And I just hate the fact that you already have people, one, getting their hopes up, and two, you have Black folks arguing back and forth over it.
There's nothing to argue about. You can't argue about zero, which is what everybody has. You're arguing about something imaginary at this point. There's no 40 acres in a mule, so don't worry about it. They can't even push through the student loan forgiveness. You think you're going to get reparations? Everybody, don't get your panties in a twist.
Thank you. They can't even get they can't even get student loans done at the congressional level because it's being held up right now in the courts because Biden tried to do it with an executive order, which we talked about this time last year. We knew it was going to get challenged in the courts. And with this Supreme Court, good fucking luck.
Right. And he did it. It's sort of like I think he did the same thing Newsom did by wheeling out the reparations word. I think Biden wheeled out the student forgiveness term, knowing he can't do it, but at least it doesn't look like it's on him, right? That's not on the Democrats, that's on them. But if you wheel it out in a way that is hindered, there is a strategic plan already in place to hinder it, then that's actually not a thoughtful plan. And it almost looks complicit, but in a really passive aggressive way.
Well, here's what I'd say to that. It's not about Biden saying it's not on the Democrats. It's about Biden saying it's not on him. He said multiple times, Congress needs to pass this. I'm going to sign anything that they send me for this.
Okay.
Send me a bill, get it through Congress. So he's done what he can do. And they did put a lot of thought into it. And, the extra Pell Grant thing, an extra $10,000. So up to $20,000 in forgiveness for people who receive Pell Grants. People want Biden to do something for Black folks. There you go.
Right.
The overwhelming majority of Black and brown student loan borrowers are people who got Pell Grants.
True.
Yeah, but thank you. That's a really good point. It almost looks complicit because you knew this wasn't going to pass. You just
right. I mean, he's a lawyer. These people are lawyers. They are trained to predict strategic outcomes. That's the job of a lawyer, is to come up with options and then predict the outcomes to those different options. So if you present an option that on paper looks like you're doing something, but the reality of it, you already know that there are entities or strategies in place that can block it, then I have to question your intention if there was another way that could have been pushed through without those strategic blocks in place.
Okay, I'm glad that you put that out there, and I appreciate the thought, but there was nothing. There was no other way Biden could have done this with an executive order that would not have met a court challenge that would probably be dead on arrival with this Supreme Court.
Okay, fair enough.
And furthermore, there's the argument about creating bad case law that I'm worried about, because he has done a lot of other targeted forgiveness that hasn't been blanket forgiveness like he did with this executive order. Specific things where it's like, oh, if you went to this specific scam school over here, you get your loans forgiven. Oh, if you did that, you know what I mean? Like very targeted, smaller ones, say $1 billion here, $1 billion there, that type of forgiveness, right? And what the folks who were thinking ahead were worried about is he did the executive order. It's going to get challenged. It's going to eventually go to the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court kills it, which they are very likely to do, then that might set a precedent so that he can't do any of the other forgiveness that he has been doing.
True. Thank you for validating my point. They're complicit, both sides. That's why I don't support either side. They're either lying or spraying bullshit. One side pretends not to be able to get anything done. The other side acts like they don't give a shit enough to get things done. But either way, the result is nothing's getting done. Personally, they should all be voted out of office until we can get candidates in there who know how to work with each other. We didn't vote these people in so that they could tell us that the other side won't work with them. We voted them in because they're supposed to be able to work with the other side who opposes them regardless. That's the job. And if they can't do it, then they should get the tired asses out of those positions and let's put in some fresh blood who can.
Right. And what do you think about the people who say student loan forgiveness is just unfair? What about the people who paid? What about the people who didn't have student loans?
If we had no problem bailing out Wall Street for doing the wrong thing, why don't we throw a Hail Mary out there and actually do a little bit for a few people who actually try to do the right thing? At least they try to do the right thing. We're bailing out Wall Street and airlines, who we know for a fact are making record profits. So if we're willing to bail them out for doing the wrong thing just to keep the economy going, why wouldn't we, with all of our Christian values and all of our alleged support for education, just take a little bit of an edge off? Biden's not forgiving everything. He's forgiving maybe 10 or 20%. The average person has anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000 worth of loans. Even if he shaves off 10 grand, Jesus, you're still left with the rest. Why not? If it could help a little bit for a little while, why not? What's the alternative? What we have now?
Yeah. And if we're talking about the long list of government giveaways to people and companies,
a long list of government giveaways. You're telling me this is the hill to die on?
Yeah. This is at the bottom of the list in terms of money that's been given away to folks that didn't really deserve it or unfairly given away. Come on.
Absolutely. Come
all
on.
The oil subsidies, all the no bid contracts that were given to friends of Congress people and people who donated. Like, come on.
Preach. Stop the hypocrisy. Stop the hypocrisy. That should be the new slogan. That should be the name of the third party. Stop the hypocrisy.
Where do I sign up? I'll start volunteering right now.
Let's call a spade a spade. Let's call a spade a spade, and maybe then we've got some place we can all meet each other. Let's start from the truth and then work backwards from there. On this episode of Raw Food.